In 1906, Percy Harrison Fawcett made his first trip to South America, under orders from the Royal Geographical Society, to attempt to map out the dense rainforests at the borderlands between Brazil and Bolivia. Over the next few years, he would befriend native tribes, catch sights of untold wonders and wildlife, and take pictures of the untouched wilderness. This would inspire a lifelong obsession with the Amazon region, culminating in his ill-fated search for the lost city he called Zed. Over a decade before his disappearance in the South American jungle, however, he met with his friend Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the writer most famous for creating Sherlock Holmes. The two men talked at length about the mysteries of the Amazon, inspiring Doyle to write a serialized adventure novel based on Fawcett's hunch that prehistoric animals might still live out where civilized man had yet to venture. This novel, The Lost World, which included none too subtle anti-slavery and anti-colonialism themes, would become a smash hit and remains to this day the writer's second greatest work. It was first adapted to the screen as a silent film in 1925, which featured incredible stop-motion dinosaurs courtesy of the great Willis O'Brien. The movie helped to popularize the so-called jungle movie, a genre that remained popular for decades, and as the 1960s approached and television began threatening the movie theater's motion picture dominance, Hollywood eagerly turned back to the jungle movie to offer spectacle and adventure that you just couldn't get from your living room.
The infamous Professor Challenger has just returned from the Amazon rainforest with a shocking claim. Dinosaurs still roam the Earth. Facing skepticism and ridicule, the professor proposes another expedition to prove his claims, and he is quickly joined by the reporter Ed Malone, the hunter Lord Roxton, and the beautiful Jennifer Holmes, all of whom have ulterior motives of their own. After reaching the plateau, they quickly discover that the prehistoric monsters are real, but those same monsters destroy their only means of escape as the party is beset by native cannibals. Can they escape this lost world with their lives, or will they face their own irrevocable extinction?
On the heels of the successful Journey to the Center of the Earth, 20th Century Fox, eager for a repeat performance, turned to the writer, producer, and director Irwin Allen, who had made a name for himself in the mid-50s with the ambitious nature film The Animal World, featuring stop-motion dinosaurs courtesy of Willis O'Brien and Ray Harryhausen. Allen had purchased the rights to Conan Doyle's The Lost World, and was eager to get started on a big-budget film adaptation with an all-star cast. To help him adapt the book for a modern audience, Allen hired the workhorse screenwriter Charles Bennett, with whom he had collaborated for 1950's Where Danger Lives and 1957's The Story of Mankind. He also hired Willis O'Brien to help with the dinosaur sequences, envisioning another round of stop-motion spectacle. O'Brien drew up several designs for the film, but even though he would ultimately keep his name in the credits, O'Brien's work was almost entirely discarded when the dinosaurs were instead created with live action. 20th Century Fox was struggling financially, more than the company cared to admit, and it was betting all of its capital on a biopic of Cleopatra, which was still in the early stages of pre-production. At around the time Allen was gearing up to make The Lost World, Fox had just signed a record-shattering $1 million deal with Elizabeth Taylor to star as the famous Egyptian queen. As a result, the company began slashing the budgets of its other projects, including The Lost World.
While we're stopped, I just want to quickly remind you to hit that like button, and if you really do like this video, hit that subscribe as well. Your support really makes this channel possible, so please, if you like what I'm doing and you want to see more, consider joining my Patreon to get access to bonus content, vote on future topics, and more. If you want to see even more from me, I'm also the co-host of a couple of different podcasts, the Streaming HEAP and From Here to Paternity, which are available wherever you get your podcasts, and I have a novel called Paradox that is available through Amazon. If all else fails, though, you can always check out my website at emcgill.com, where you'll find written reviews of plenty more sci-fi classics in both film and literature. Now then, with all that shameless self-promotion out of the way, let's move on.
20th Century Fox's cost-cutting also affected the casting process. Allen had originally intended the film to star more expensive actors, and entered into negotiations with Victor Mature, Robert Mitchum, Peter Ustinov, Trevor Howard, Clifton Webb, and Orson Welles, among others. Despite being unable to come to terms with any of these due to budget restrictions, Allen still managed to pull together a pretty stellar cast, highlighted by the great Claude Rains as Professor Challenger. Rains was fighting a nasty cold throughout production, which Allen tried to hide by giving the actor as few takes as possible.
My lost world. Lost forever.
And though this is pretty far removed from Rains' most iconic roles,
How can you close me up? On what ground?
I'm shocked to find that gambling is going on in here.
You're winning, sir.
Oh, thank you very much.
Claude Rains' Challenger still manages to be the heart and soul of the film. For the proximate protagonist Ed Malone, Fox turned to David Hedison, who had previously appeared in The Enemy Below and The Fly. Hedison reportedly didn't like the script, but persevered enough to earn the respect of Allen, who would go on to offer him the lead in 1961's Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, which Hedison would reject, only to play the same part in Allen's television adaptation a few years later. The female lead of Jenny is played by former child actress and future Bond girl Jill St. John, who Fox was trying to promote at the time as the next big starlet. She would gain more fame and acclaim after The Lost World, in which the only really notable thing about her is a pair of pants so tight they might get this video demonetized. The famous and morally compromised Lord Roxton, meanwhile, is played by Michael Rennie, most famous for The Day the Earth Stood Still, in which he plays Klaatu, a role that had coincidentally been rejected by none other than Claude Rains. Fox had made Rennie a staple supporting actor throughout the 50s, following the middling performance of 1952's Les Miserables, in which the studio had tried to make him a leading man. Rounding out the cast are the Argentine-American Fernando Lamas as Gomez, and British comedy great Richard Haydn as Professor Summerlee. Filming on The Lost World began in mid-February 1960, with a month-and-a-half pause in March and April due to a Screen Actors Guild strike. Some second-unit footage was filmed in South America, including at Iguazu Falls and Angel Falls, and the Glendale Airport stands in for an unnamed London airport, but otherwise, the movie was filmed almost entirely on Fox soundstages and backlots, making the excessive day-for-night shots all the more unforgivable.
Beautiful night, isn't it?
Many sets were reused from Journey to the Center of the Earth, and the dinosaurs were created using monitor lizards from Singapore and young caiman alligators, all with various bits and bobs attached to their bodies. Though admittedly inferior to stop motion, this technique wasn't as laughable in 1960 as it is today, and was used in several different films, including Journey to the Center of the Earth. O'Brien was understandably upset, but he did begrudgingly do some relatively prosaic split-screen effects work. Also upset was the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, the ASPCA, which lodged a formal complaint against the film. The Lost World released in July of 1960, to largely negative reviews and a mediocre box office of $2.5 million in theater rentals against its $1.5 million budget. It proved popular with younger audiences, and Allen managed to spin it as enough of a success to further his career, which would include an impressive run of sci-fi television shows, and later, some of the best disaster movies ever made. He did try to make a television series out of The Lost World, but it never got the green light, though Allen did cram tons of stock footage from the film into many of his other television projects throughout the 1960s. Another version of The Lost World nearly made it into production in the mid-80s, with Jack Arnold at the helm, but Arnold's failing health at the time landed the project in development hell, where it later emerged as a TV show that ran for 3 seasons. There have been a few made-for-TV movie versions as well, including one in which John Rhys-Davies plays Professor Challenger, but nothing has made it to the theater since 1960, unless you count the Jurassic Park sequel that borrows its name. To be fair, beyond just the title, Crichton's book and Spielberg's film do have a few subtle nods to both Conan Doyle's book and the 1925 silent film. I'm not opposed to a modern adaptation of the story, though it would have to contend with advances in both science and technology that would make the idea of dinosaurs living somewhere in the Amazon a much harder sell in the modern world. But I'm also amenable to the contention that it's not really necessary, given that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's novel had already spawned an entire subgenre of sci-fi fantasy that is often called Lost World fiction. As for the 1960s version, I want to make a couple of things clear before I get into my analysis. There's been an ongoing trend in my comments lately that accuses me of not enjoying the things I'm critical of, which I have taken maybe a little too personally. There is a chasm of difference between how I personally feel about a work of art and what I think of it critically, and though these two things are not mutually exclusive, I try to keep them as separate as I can when evaluating a movie on its own merits. But let me be blunt. If I am reviewing a movie on this channel and giving it the title of sci-fi classic, it means I like it, pure and simple. Don't try to tell me otherwise because that's insulting. 1960's The Lost World is a movie I'm sure many of you grew up with and are nostalgic about, and I can see how it could be an inoffensive, fun adventure that you think on warmly. For my part, I do enjoy the film, but it has one pretty significant flaw that is hard for me to overlook. None of the characters are very likable. I appreciate that most of them have some depth, with some good reveals about their hidden motivations sprinkled throughout the narrative. This gives you a glimpse of the kinds of ensemble stories Irwin Allen would juggle so well in his future body of work. But all of the characters in The Lost World are, without fail, jerks, aside from maybe David, who is relegated almost entirely to the background. Ed Malone is a chauvinist even by the standards of 1960, Lord Roxton is a borderline sociopath, and Jenny is a naive and judgmental girl who acts like a powerful independent woman, but who is ultimately defined solely by which man she chooses to fawn over. Even Professor Challenger, who is the only character to have even a whiff of self-reflection about events,
They undoubtedly intend to kill us.
Kill us.
Why not? An invasion of privacy gives a man the right to kill. We are the invaders.
is introduced as a short-tempered bully who physically assaults a man for asking him a question. But the worst character traits are reserved for the South Americans. Gomez is so driven by a need to avenge his brother that he is willing to kill the entire party, and his assistant, Costa, is a borderline racist caricature driven by greed who is caught in the act of trying to force himself on a woman halfway through the story. Then there's the indigenous people, who are just stereotypical bloodthirsty cannibals. These characters drag down the whole movie, which is a shame because I do think there's a lot of good filmmaking on display, from the sets to the music and even the effects, despite the film's limited budget. Sure, the lizard dinosaurs are a little goofy to modern eyes, but I kinda like them, in a kitschy sort of way. Also, I think the 1960 movie, even more so than the book or the silent film adaptation, is a great little parable about Western society. Here we have a bunch of white people, spearheaded by two British scientists, who go to an untouched piece of natural wonder, kill a bunch of natives, steal some treasures, and then blow the whole place up. If that's not a perfect encapsulation of European-style colonialism, I don't know what else it could be. And that's all for today, my fellow Earthlings. Do you think the lizard effects hold up as well as stop motion? Let me know in the comments, and while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you for watching, and until next time, when we'll learn one of the lesser-known dangers of the logging industry, this is the Unapologetic Geek, telling you to never be ashamed of what you love, as long as you're not hurting anyone.